You know, you're talking about the importance of storytelling at a young age. I want everyone to know they have a story to tell. It doesn't matter how much money you have. It doesn't matter how much equipment you have. Everyone has a story to tell, and we want to shape that next generation of voices and make sure they're heard.
Hi, my name's Jim Ellis, and you're watching Industry Insights, where we bring in industry experts to share their experience and their knowledge to the next generation of filmmakers. We're here in the Film Hub, a co-working space for filmmakers, in the beautiful city of Vista, California, the film-friendly city of Vista, California. Today, our guest is Sheri Stilson, who at the moment is an executive director for Student Television Network. In the past, she's been a TV producer in Hollywood for about 10 years. She worked with such networks as CBS, MTV, Fox, Warner Brothers, and the Animal Planet. So, Sheri, great to have you here.
Thanks, Jim. Thanks to be here. I'm so excited.
Yeah, we've passed each other in the halls a number of times and been wanting to get together. Well, here we are. So,
I know. Small world.
Sheri's has done a number of things in her short period of time in the industry, and I think we'll start with where she was raised. She was raised in San Diego, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm a San Diego native, born and raised in San Marcos, California. So I attended private school over there through 8th grade, went to San Marcos High School, which has now been totally remodeled. But I love Southern California. I've moved away when I've been in the industry. I've lived in LA and New York, but have now come back here because this is home.
Yeah, good. And were your parents in the industry?
Not at all. My parents are much more introvert than I am. My dad is a naval engineer, retired, but down in Coronado.
Yeah.
And my mom was one of my teachers, and they're both much quieter and more reserved. So I'm not sure where it all came from, but I've always been the outgoing singer, theater major, sports player in the family.
Didn't know you were a theater major. Well, good.
Yeah, I started that way. I think that's where my attraction for entertainment came from, because I did acting and musicals growing up in private school, and I've performed here locally, but I always wanted to be on Broadway. So that was the initial dream. And then I ended up doing lots of shows in high school and after, but I had to balance that with sports. Which side did I really want to do? And then when it came time for college, I decided if I weren't going to actually make it on Broadway as a theater major, then maybe I could be close to entertainment by studying behind the scenes.
Okay. So you decided to go to San Diego State.
I did.
And at that point, you graduated with a film and television degree, right? Mm-hmm. And at that time, you alluded to it a little bit, but what did you desire to accomplish in the industry at that point?
Well, I just wanted to figure out what else I could do to get so close to the entertainment that I loved. Every time I'd watched a film or a live show, there was always this attraction. I knew I wanted to be part of that energy. So I actually started here locally at Palomar College, which has a fantastic program. I was there 2 years, went on to San Diego State, and I just knew that I somehow wanted to work in Hollywood. I hadn't quite figured out the position yet at the moment, but.
Okay. While you're in college, I understood that you've got a Student Emmy Award, or a couple of them.
I won 2 Emmys.
Yeah, so tell us about that.
That was very exciting. I loved San Diego State because the program's very hands-on, and there's some other amazing programs across the United States and world. But what I found with a lot of them was that you don't get to touch the cameras until grad school. So I was really attracted to San Diego State, and as your finals for the film classes, you have to make short films. And so the first one that I ever wrote and produced, I won an Emmy for. It was just a tiny little silent film where I was always sick of the damsel in distress, where she's tied up on the railroad tracks and needs help. So I reversed the whole story using no words. And the guy, the robber, got tied up. And that was fun for me. And I think it got some good attention. So I went to the Emmy Awards and won. And then I was recruited by another group of students to produce a film for them. And we ended up winning as well. So it was 2 years in a row. Still after that, I don't think it's over yet for me. I told them when I did, you have to do a speech and everything, a red carpet event, but I told them I'm going to come back and win one of the big ones because the student Emmys, it's still the same name, but it's more of a plaque, not, the big statue.
Right.
But that was a very exciting time for me because I was already being recognized for just these ideas that me and my team have. It was a collaborative effort.
Yeah. But obviously you had the, let's say, golden thumb. And, anytime you applied for you got the award. And so others wanted you on their team. That's awesome. Okay, so now I guess you're out of college and your first jobs were, was it San Diego Padres? What did you do for them?
I was working for the San Diego Padres throughout college. And I guess right after, I was a stage manager. The first year Petco Park opened, so down there with Tim Flannery, talk about a dream job being a San Diego girl, Padre love. I got to stage manage the pregame show out in center field. And then I also was working at SeaWorld the same summer in the entertainment department. And this is where I just let people know, try a lot of things, because at SeaWorld, I was the camera person for the killer whale show. I did sound for the pets show, sound at dolphins, and none of that is what I thought I wanted to do. It wasn't acting, but it's all part of the big picture. So I tried all kinds of things in San Diego and really had a good sampling of things before I graduated.
Yeah. Wow. Videotaping killer whales. Wow. Can you smile a little bit more?
I know, you got to track them with the flips and all that they do. It was,
that's
it was
awesome.
good, but a fun job.
So I understand that also in the past you've taught a course how to break into Hollywood. I think some of our viewers may be interested in some of those pointers. Why don't you share maybe 2 or 3 pointers of that you come to mind that would help someone to break into the industry in Hollywood or any city, I suppose.
Sure. Well, as you were talking about what I did right after college at San Diego State, I had this amazing professor, Tom Metter. We had a really special relationship. So even in college, I was already nurturing relationships and networking. So I always tell people to do that. When I graduated, Tom gave me 5 names. And on that list, it was my job to pursue these people. But he trusted me with those names, people currently working in Hollywood. So one of them on there was John Kerhofer, who was working on Survivor. And to this day, John Kerhofer still is the co-EP producing the challenges that you see, but he was an SDSU alum. So I did reach out to all the names, but John and I clicked and he got me my first job at Burnett Productions. So I went in there and pursued a lot of neat things. But after my time there, when I went back to the course, the thing that John Kerhofer taught me was get inside the castle walls. So it can be very intimidating, the whole studios, and there are walls around them when you drive Hollywood, and New York's a little more low key, but just get inside the castle walls, because after you step foot in, you don't know what might happen. So I took a job as a transcriber, which was nothing that I wanted to do, just typing verbatim those interviews, even the mess ups. But then you're in there and you start seeing people in the break room, or you see people loading gear and you can ask questions. So that's one tip that I always like to give people. Another thing, this is where I get honest and vulnerable, but I think it's important, is to be persistent, but don't pester people. There's a fine line, and I was very confident. I would walk into places, hi, I'm Sheri, hi, I'm Sheri. But I was mentioning to you earlier that I literally got fired from my first internship here in San Diego because I was a little too aggressive. And they had me in the office at first, and I thought, no, I want to get on set. That's where the action is. I want to get on set. But then when I went out there, I'd been running around all day doing a lot of stuff, and I just took like a tiny break And someone said, a good PA never sits. And I was like, okay, so that did stick with me. But when they asked me to do something else, I think I got a little feisty. Like, I've been doing all this stuff. And then I literally got let go. And even at Mark Burnett, I would stay after. I was working on The Apprentice, but I was in the house of Mark Burnett, who's now done The Voice, and he's currently producing Survivor. When I'm there, I would stay and I'd go to all these offices, and I was begging to go work in New York on the next Apprentice, which was with Martha Stewart. But I talked to the challenge department, I talked to the production department, to the post department, and all of them liked me. And I was like, okay, I'm going. And I actually had a couple say, yeah, we'll bring you out to New York. But then the word spread, oh, Sheri talked to you too? Oh, because she talked to us. And next thing you know, they all thought, I don't think this is the right trip for you. You're not sure where you want to be. And so I did get to go in the post department. Thank you always for letting me go. But my point is just like, know where the line is, because sometimes you approach people and they're in the middle of something, or you can read their body language. Now's not the right time to go ask, hey, can I get on set, or can I do this? So there's a balance in following through, but in a tactful way.
Right. Because nobody wants to work with someone like that anyway, right?
No.
Yeah. So.
No. Something else that comes to mind is stay true to yourself. So it's not an easy industry. It's brutal. In fact, long hours, a lot of scary things happening behind the scenes that people don't know about. So I think it's important to know who you are before you go in, and don't necessarily seek approval. It's one thing to do a good job, but I ended up getting into interviews or being asked to work on shows that made me uncomfortable just morally. I might be asked to do a show where I had to observe and interview a couple that's having sex for 30 days in a row. And I thought, that just doesn't sound like me. And I totally failed the interview because I should have never gone in. I knew. And then there's shows that were very successful. A lot of my friends worked on them, like Jersey Shore, Tila Tequila, but those weren't my style of show. So I ended up being known as the church girl, the HGTV girl, because I love HGTV. To this day, I still hope I can work for them again. But I think you don't have to sacrifice who you are, and I still worked.
Yeah, that's a great point, because so many people think they have to take everything and anything, and yet that's a great point, that you don't have to do that and still be successful. Good, those are great points. Now you're involved more with Student Television Network.
Right.
This is something that's kind of close to my heart as well, because you're teaching kids how to tell stories, which is script writing in a sense, in the broadcast and in film, right? So I guess you're starting out with, it sounds like sixth graders, right? Sixth graders who are about 12 years old. How do you teach a 12-year-old to write compelling stories? I know there's principles in storytelling. Perhaps that's the answer.
Well, we serve 6th through 12th graders, but I think really a good story can be found anywhere. So what I do is help the teachers, and we provide curriculum and contests that they can give to these. But, to any 12th grader, I think it's your story to tell. So there are the principles, like you said, of good lighting or having the idea and a script. But I think not being afraid to find your story. It's one thing to have a role model. I looked up to a lot of mentors, or I would watch a lot of things and dissect how it was done. But that's what we do with the junior hires, is really have them watching old films, writing down what it is that was good about it, and just taking basic little things to boost their confidence. And a lot of your first projects probably aren't going to be that good, but it's just, here's my idea. Am I going to do it with my iPhone? Am I going to do it with fancy equipment?
Right. It could be told on a number of different media. But the point that I think that's so incredible, because I think that storytelling, for one, and writing music are two of the most incredible talents if you want to direct a culture in a certain direction,
Sure.
right? And so that's why I just love what you're doing, especially with the younger kids, to tell a story, but to tell it well enough where people are engaged. And that's got to be a challenge. But you obviously you know how to do it because you got a couple Emmys on a few of those.
I've told a few stories.
Yeah. So and so that's kind of a jump from what you were doing previously. What was the transition to student television network?
Well, I'd been in LA, I'd worked in Fiji, Atlanta, New York, and I was just needing a break from the Hollywood industry. Came back to my roots down here in San Diego, and I did work at Legoland for a while doing events there. I figured it's similar, it's just we don't roll camera, but it's a lot of the same logistics that a producer, which is what I ended up becoming, that you would do. And I ended up being recruited for a student television network because people I had met at Legoland as I'm running events came in and saw me producing these events, setting things up. And then in talking, they also learned about my Hollywood experience. So they thought, well, this could be a really good fit for you. And I was asked to go through the interview process, and here I am. I had no idea then what I was getting into. I've never worked for a nonprofit. So Student Television is a nonprofit that supports teachers and students across the nation. We have over 550 schools that have a focus in film, broadcast journalism, or media classes. So it's a membership for the teachers, but we end up through the teachers reaching over 30,000 students a year.
So it's public and private? So
we have a lot of local ones even.
Wow.
Wahomie.
So you approach each school and present your curriculum and see if they're interested?
I don't. So the way student television works is it's a web-based platform, and teachers sign on for a membership. And on our website, we have curriculum contests where they can compete. So, Carlsbad High School is involved and they're here locally. They might be competing against a school in Miami, and I don't physically go teach at the schools. The teachers are the educators.
Sure.
We're just here at STN to support them. A lot of them are maybe the only one on their campus. It's not like those other departments where you have 10, 12 math teachers. A lot of them were frustrated with a lack of resources or without networking events. So STN was started over 20 years ago by a group of teachers that just said, we want more. And now we've grown to the larger span that we are today, where we bring in industry professionals, host an annual convention. There's just tons that STN is doing to empower those future storytellers.
That's awesome. So then you have access to, you said 30,000 students right now.
Correct.
And how long have you been doing the directing?
I've been the executive director for a little over 2 years now.
Okay.
So heck, I got myself in training to equip myself, and then I'm using the skills that I was recruited for. But it's been a ride, and we just did our annual convention up in Long Beach, California, and had about 3,000 people there in person. So in 3 days, we're doing workshops, we're doing contests where the kids literally have to write, produce, edit a whole contest in the span of 4 to 8 hours. 8 is the max.
Perfect.
We did 3 live shows with awards. So talk about like Emmys, we do red carpet events. But it was just amazing to stand there. I was actually very humbled at the end of this convention because I thought, how did I end up here? It's not a Hollywood set, so to speak, but just the way I'm able to now use my skills and experience and be pouring back into these students. You see their faces. You see them down there with the camera, doing this low angle shot, asking me for an interview, taking selfies. And it was great because that's our whole goal, is for every voice to be heard. You're talking about the importance of storytelling at a young age. I want everyone to know they have a story to tell. It doesn't matter how much money you have. It doesn't matter how much equipment you have. Everyone has a story to tell. And we want to shape that next generation of voices and make sure they're heard. That's
awesome. I was recently listening to Randy Bachman, an interview with him. He was one of the founders of Bachman Turner Overdrive. And it's incredible how songs get started. just small events in somebody's
Mm-hmm.
life, or even a sentence that somebody speaks can turn into a song.
Yes.
And I think that's pretty inspiring because you have so many perspectives when you have all these students.
Oh, yeah.
And their lives are so unique and what they've experienced. And no one can tell the story that they can tell.
Absolutely.
And so to reach that many kids, and not every story is going to resonate with every person, but those do need to be told. So where do you see student television going from here forward? What's your goal?
We are about to explode. That's what I keep telling people. STN's been around over 20 years, but the reception we had at this most recent convention and the highest membership in STN history, I know that great things are about to happen. We have big name sponsors emailing, visiting, and saying, how do we become part of this? So what I see is just growth, not just across the United States, because we have tons of schools in Hawaii, Texas, Florida, but international. We have some in China, of all places, Mexico. So I see STN growing, and I'd really like to just raise more funding. That's my passion. Because when I was producing in Hollywood, I had no idea about Student Television Network, and it's been around over 20 years. Mm-hmm. So if I had known, I would have had the opportunity to speak and lead a workshop, give back financially, all kinds of things. We even use industry professionals to judge the work, the contests that they do. So that's my goal now, is to just get a stronger financial foundation and then bring in more industry professionals, like a lot of the people here at the Film Hub or in Vista, to pour into these students and make sure they have the resources they need. So I would like STN to become a household name, just like a PBS or something like that, where people both in the industry and in the education system know that this is a place that believes in storytellers and wants to help empower them.
Yeah, that's great.
I do want to tell people just a couple more things about the tips. You were having me really bring back my memories of that Hollywood magnetism course I got. I just want to also encourage people to take risks, walk with confidence. There was a lot of times that I asked people for a word at coffee, or if they would let me just shadow them for a day. So don't be afraid, even if you're in 6th grade or younger, to find somebody that you could learn from. I know you guys have done a lot of tours with the younger people, just trying to raise the awareness. So just start taking those risks and walk with confidence. I know I was telling you about a funny risk I took when I was a little older, and this was at a weird time in my career, but I literally wanted to work in New York so badly that I packed my bag. I got hired as a local, so that means I don't have a hotel. I have to act like I'm living in New York, but I didn't have an apartment. Packed the bag, flew, had a hotel for 2 nights, and then I literally had to stay with a friend on her couch. I would wake up and her bunny was running across my face. I ended up staying at another place where there's bed bugs, but I just endured. I know, to this day I'm still petrified, but I'm just saying, go big, go big, and don't be afraid. Don't let anybody tell you that.
And so once you were,
find a way.
Yeah, so you got there, and then something happened while you were there, right?
That's right. I was working on Make Me a Supermodel for Bravo at the time, and I ended up getting promoted on that job. I ended up getting recognized for my work and hired back, and it just opened the door to all kinds of future successes and some really great friendships and memories, shooting right by the Brooklyn Bridge. I mean, who doesn't want to do that? So yeah, that risk paid off, even though I didn't know how it was going to end out. You don't always have to know the end result. Just be willing to take that first step. Right? And then believe in yourself, and you never know what door might open.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, taking the first step, that's how you walk, right? One step at a time. So then pretty soon you get to start running, I suppose. Yeah, you mentioned Mark Burnett.
Yes.
Such an interesting person. I mean, it seems like everything he does turns to gold. It's always successful. What did you gather from working with his company?
I know that he started with nothing. He was in the Air Force and over in Europe, and then came and started selling T-shirts in Venice just to pursue the dream. But what I always liked about the majority of his shows is that they were clean. I know he has been a man of faith and surrounds himself with really good people. So a lot of the things that I was on there, there's just good family shows. Not to say that's always the case. It's not. But he just really had a good work ethic from early on. He didn't let anybody tell him no. He found a way. And then you keep these nice teams of people and you treat them well. I always was in a good environment. We had bagel Fridays. You know, these are simple little things, but we were just treated well. And I think he sets the tone for that. Him and the people that, like John Kerhoffer that I mentioned, that still work under his umbrella to this day. There's a reason that people stay on like that. So I just appreciated the culture and environment that he created. I didn't have some close relationship with him. I'm sure he doesn't even know my name. Hi, Mark. But it was a pleasure to start there and get my foot inside the castle walls at Mark Burnett Productions, and they're still thriving to this day. So I'm like, hey, maybe I'll get back there on The Voice or something one of these days.
Which side of the camera?
I don't know. That remains to be seen.
Yeah. And then so Broadway, did you get to at least go see a Broadway play?
Oh, every time I'm in New York.
Yeah.
Every time I'm in. You know, when I was working on that Make Me a Supermodel show, I was put up in an amazing apartment down in Battery Park, but you get per diem when you go on set. You get cash each week to eat. But I chose to save my cash and go to Broadway shows. And obviously I ate, but minimal amounts.
Right.
So I would just stash it. I had just this big wad of cash. And I would go see off-Broadway things, but oh gosh, I can't step foot in Manhattan as long as I have time and not go. It still gets me to this day. And now my kids are performing. So even in my own house, the next generation of storytellers and performers is coming forward. Even here in Vista, performing at Moonlight tonight and Broadway Vista Theater just down the street from you.
That's right. Yeah, I remember running into you and you said your
things.
kids were going to participate in that.
A lot of great things happening here locally. So
yeah, absolutely. Maybe one last tip for students as far as this industry goes.
Know your why. Like, why do you want to be involved and why do you want to do this? I journal a lot. It's fun to track things. And then I guess I would just say, watch things. What are you going to say?
Especially your thoughts, right?
Yes.
Yeah, tracking your thoughts.
Get them down. It's nice to look back and your thoughts can turn into a story, right? So I'd always heard, and this is big for writers, but any storyteller, if you see something cool, jot it down. And I just encourage people to watch. So whether it's YouTube things or there's all the streaming these days, watch classic films. But what is it that you like about it? Are you drawn to a certain genre? And then at the end, to pause and look at the credits, because there's so many jobs that I didn't know about. When I went to film school, it's director, producer, writer, the top 5. There's so many opportunities that you don't know about. So freeze the credits, write down a few that pique your interest or that maybe you don't know what they are, and investigate, because there could be a whole career there for you just being a talent handler or craft services. We got to eat.
Yeah.
So definitely do your research and just get to know the industry and be willing to go where it leads you.
Right.
Because I was
Bed bugs or not.
Bed bugs or not. I know. I wanted to be a director, I thought. And then people said, no, you're a producer.
Yeah.
So just follow the path. Follow your heart and your passion, and I think you'll be successful.
Yeah, that's awesome. Great stuff. Thanks so much for sharing that. I think thoughts I have as you were speaking were, you watch television, you watch films, you read, and you get inspired, right, by certain works. And I think it's something to think about, that you can do the same thing for somebody else. As you develop your skills and your abilities down the road, somebody will be reading your work or watching your film and being inspired, and which changes people's lives, doesn't it? Does mine. And
always be nice, right? Be nice to the person getting you the coffee or getting you the water. You never know who the next Steven Spielberg might be. So treat everybody the way you want to be treated.
Yeah. They didn't know who Steven Spielberg was going to be at Cal State Long Beach.
Right.
Because that's where I went to school.
Okay.
He was actually, I understand, he didn't finish school. They told him this wasn't the place for him or something.
Yeah.
And he'd never graduated. And he obviously became an incredible director.
He's done a couple films.
Done a couple, yeah. Now, on the other hand, I graduated. So I don't know what that tells you about the department back then.
Hey, I love Long Beach.
Yeah, it was good. Well, that's great. Well, thanks for joining us again. And if people want to follow your work or you, where do they go?
You can go to studenttelevision.com. That's our website. And that's a great resource for any teacher, but also students. If you want to get involved, check that out. We also have a Facebook page for student television, mostly for the teachers. I know that's old for the younger generation. You can go to our Instagram page, STN Now. And there's also a STN Sheri page, because I am known to dance or do silly things. I still like to have fun. The performer in me is still alive.
That's awesome.
That would be the best places to check out what STN is up to. Also, if anybody has questions, I can be available, but the rule I always say is if you can find me. So if you can find me on my social media, obviously my name is Sheri Stilson. I work for Student Television Network. Do your research, and I'd be happy to answer any questions, maybe even have that cup of coffee if anybody needed a listening ear or wanted to pursue the industry.
That's awesome. And if you want to follow us at the Film Hub, follow us on Instagram at the Film Hub Inc. or on our website, thefilmhubinc.com. And now, Mateo's going to put in some music and we're going to dance.
Yes. Is it really music? No.
The Film Hub. Inspire the creative. Ignite the world.